My family told me to stay out of sight during the anniversary party. I booked a vacation. When the event collapsed, they begged me to come back. My therapist says writing about traumatic experiences can help process them, though I'm not sure anything can help me process the absolute chaos that was my parents' 30th anniversary party. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Rebecca, and I'm the middle child of 3 daughters in what everyone considers the perfect Anderson family of Westfield, Connecticut. My older sister Madison is a successful corporate lawyer married to a surgeon, and my younger sister Paige just graduated from Yale Law School. Then there's me, the family disappointment who dropped out of medical school to become a freelance graphic designer. For context, my parents, Richard and Catherine Anderson, are what you'd call old money Connecticut royalty. Dad inherited his father's investment firm, and Mom comes from a family that's been in the social register since the 1800s. They live in a colonial mansion that's been featured in Connecticut Magazine twice, and they host charity galas that raise hundreds of thousands of dollars for various causes. In their world, appearances are everything. The problem started about 6 months ago when I began dating Jake Martinez, a tattoo artist I met at a coffee shop in Hartford. Jake is incredibly talented, owns his own shop, and is honestly the kindest person I've ever met. He volunteers at the animal shelter, helps elderly neighbors with yard work, and makes me laugh until my sides hurt. But to my parents, he might as well have been an axe murderer because he has visible tattoos, rides a motorcycle, and didn't go to an Ivy League school. The first time I brought Jake to Sunday dinner, the temperature in the dining room dropped about 20 degrees. Mom smiled that tight, polite smile she reserves for the help, and Dad barely acknowledged Jake's existence. Madison spent the entire evening making passive-aggressive comments about life choices, while Paige kept shooting me looks like I'd brought home a rabid raccoon. Things only got worse from there. Every family gathering became an exercise in endurance as they'd make little bigs about Jake's profession, always said with air quotes, or my phase, also with air quotes. When Jake surprised me with a weekend trip to Boston for my birthday, Mom called it so creative in a tone that suggested she'd rather he'd planned a root canal. But the final straw came 2 months ago during the anniversary party planning. The whole family was gathered in Mom's sitting room, going over guest lists and seating arrangements, when Mom casually mentioned that Jake wouldn't be invited. "It's just family and close friends, sweetheart," she said, not even looking up from her notebook. "This is a very important event for your father and me. The mayor will be there, the Huntingtons, the Washingtons from the country club. It's simply not appropriate." I felt my face flush. Not appropriate? Jake is my boyfriend. We've been together for 8 months. Madison looked up from her phone. "Becca, come on. This isn't some casual barbecue. There will be photographers from Connecticut Life magazine. Think about the optics." "The optics?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "He's not a criminal. He's a successful business owner." "Successful is relative," Paige chimed in. "I mean, how much money can someone really make drawing on people?" Dad finally spoke up. "Rebecca, this isn't a debate. The guest list is finalized. Jake will not be attending." I stood up, my hands shaking with anger. "Fine. Then neither will I." The room went silent. Mom's pen stopped moving across her notebook. "Don't be dramatic, dear," Mom said. "Of course you'll be there. It's our anniversary." "No, I won't. If my boyfriend isn't welcome, then neither am I." That's when Dad dropped the bomb that still makes my blood boil thinking about it. "Rebecca, let's be honest here. Having you there would be complicated enough as it is. Perhaps it would be best if you stayed out of sight during the party anyway." The words hit me like a physical blow. My own father had just told me to stay out of sight at their anniversary celebration because I was an embarrassment to the family. Madison and Paige shifted uncomfortably, but neither said a word in my defense. Mom just nodded like Dad had suggested we change the flower arrangements. "Out of sight," I repeated slowly. "You want me to stay out of sight?" "You know what I mean," Dad said, his voice getting that edge it gets when he's losing patience. "This party is important for my business relationships. The Huntingtons are considering a major investment, and Senator Walsh will be there with his wife. We can't have any distractions." I was the distraction. Not my accomplishments, not the successful design business I'd built from nothing, not the fact that I was genuinely happy for the first time in years. I was a distraction because I didn't fit their perfect family image. "You know what?" I said, grabbing my purse. "Consider me officially out of sight." I walked out of that house and didn't look back. The next morning, I called my best friend Sarah, who's been my voice of reason since college. "They told you to what?" Sarah practically screamed into the phone when I told her what happened. "To stay out of sight," I repeated. Like I'm some kind of family shame. "Becca, that's insane. Even for your parents, that's next level awful." "I know. And the worst part is, Madison and Paige just sat there. They didn't say a single word." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "So what are you going to do?" That's when the idea started forming. I'm going to give them exactly what they asked for. I'm going to stay out of sight. What do you mean? I mean, I'm going to disappear for their precious anniversary party. I'm going to book a vacation and be completely unreachable. Sarah laughed. You know what? That's actually brilliant. Let them have their perfect party without you. So that's exactly what I did. I went online and booked a 2-week vacation to Costa Rica, leaving 3 days before the anniversary party and not returning until a week after. I chose a remote eco-lodge in the rainforest where cell service was spotty at best and Wi-Fi was basically non-existent. If they wanted me out of sight, I'd be so far out of sight I might as well have been on another planet. The best part? I used the money I'd been saving for a new car to book an absolutely luxurious trip. Private transportation, guided tours, spa treatments, the works. If I was going to be banished from my own family, I was going to do it in style. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just sent a group text to my family the day before I left, as requested. I'll be staying out of sight for the anniversary party. Have a wonderful celebration. Love, your invisible daughter. Then I turned off my phone and headed to the airport. Costa Rica was absolutely magical. I stayed at this incredible eco-lodge called Nayar Gardens, nestled in the rainforest with views of the Arenal volcano. My villa had a private pool, and I woke up every morning to the sound of howler monkeys and exotic birds. I went ziplining, took a chocolate-making class, hiked through the cloud forest, and had my first surfing lesson on the Pacific coast. For the first time in months, I felt completely at peace. I wasn't constantly bracing myself for the next passive-aggressive comment about my life choices or feeling like I had to defend my relationship. I was just free. The eco-lodge had limited internet, which was perfect for my digital detox. I'd check my email maybe once every few days, mostly just to make sure my clients weren't having any emergencies. I saw I had dozens of missed calls and texts, but I figured it was just my family being dramatic about my absence. It wasn't until day 10 of my trip, when I finally got a decent internet connection at a cafe in the nearby town, that I realized something had gone very, very wrong. My phone exploded with notifications the moment I turned on data. 43 missed calls from Mom, 31 from Dad, 22 from Madison, 18 from Paige, and dozens of texts ranging from confused to angry to increasingly desperate. The first few texts were about what I expected. Mom, Rebecca, where are you? This is ridiculous. Dad, stop this childish behavior and come home. Madison, you're being incredibly selfish. But as I scrolled through the messages, the tone changed dramatically. Mom, Rebecca, please call. There's been a problem with the catering. Dad, we need you to come home. The party is falling apart. Madison, Becca, I'm serious. Mom is having a breakdown. Paige, where the hell are you? Everything is going wrong. And then, buried in the chaos, I found the message that made my jaw drop. Mom, Rebecca, I'm begging you. The party is a disaster. We need you to come home and fix this. I know you organize events. Please. I'm sorry about what we said. I stared at my phone in disbelief. They needed me to fix their party? The party they'd specifically told me to stay away from? Curious and slightly vindictive, I scrolled through my email to see if there were any clues about what had gone wrong. That's when I found the email from Madison that explained everything. Becca, I know you're angry, but you need to come home right now. The anniversary party is next weekend and everything is falling apart. The caterer had a kitchen fire and cancelled. The florist double booked and can't do our arrangements. The photographer fell and broke his leg. The string quartet was exposed to COVID and had to cancel. Mom hired some event planner to replace you, but she just ran off with a deposit after half the vendors cancelled. Mom is having panic attacks, Dad is screaming at everyone, and Paige and I have no idea how to fix any of this. We know you plan events sometimes for your graphic design clients. Please, we're desperate. I read the email 3 times before the full scope of their disaster sank in. They were calling me because their perfect party had imploded, and suddenly my embarrassing skill set as someone who occasionally organized events for my design clients was exactly what they needed. The irony was almost too perfect to believe. I sat in that little Costa Rican cafe, sipping a café con leche and watching toucans in the trees outside, while my family's world was apparently crumbling back home. Part of me felt a twinge of sympathy. Planning a party for 200 people is legitimately stressful. But a bigger part of me remembered Dad telling me to stay out of sight and felt absolutely no obligation to cut my vacation short to save their asses. I decided to call Sarah first to get her take on the situation. Holy crap, Becca, she laughed when I told her what was happening. They literally told you to stay away, and now they want you to come back and save their party? That's exactly what they want. Madison's email said they're desperate. So what are you going to do? I looked out at the beautiful rainforest around me, thought about the howler monkeys that had woken me up that morning, and made my decision. I'm going to stay exactly where they told me to stay. Out of sight. You're not going back? Nope. I'm going to finish my vacation, and they can figure out their own mess. They made it very clear that I was an embarrassment who would be a distraction at their important party. So I'm giving them exactly what they asked for, a party without me. Sarah was quiet for a moment. You know they're going to be furious. They're already furious. The only difference is now they need something from me, which is their problem, not mine. I spent another hour in the cafe, reading through all the increasingly frantic messages from my family. The desperation was palpable. Mom, who never admits she needs help with anything, had actually used the word begging in a text message. Dad, who considers asking for help a sign of weakness, had swallowed his pride enough to call me 43 times. But the message that really got to me was from Paige. Becca, I know we screwed up. I know what Dad said was wrong. But please don't let Mom and Dad's anniversary be ruined because you're mad at us. They really love each other, and this party means everything to them. For a moment, I wavered. Despite everything, I did love my parents, and the idea of their anniversary being ruined made me feel genuinely sad. But then I remembered sitting in Mom's sitting room, being told I was too much of an embarrassment to attend my own parents' anniversary party. I remembered Dad telling me to stay out of sight like I was something shameful to be hidden away. I remembered Madison and Paige sitting there silently while my parents humiliated me. My sympathy evaporated. I crafted a response and sent it to the family group chat. Hi everyone. I'm having an amazing time in Costa Rica and won't be back until next Thursday. I'm staying out of sight just like you asked me to. I'm sure your perfect party will be perfect without me. Have fun, hibiscus emoji. Then I turned my phone back off and ordered another café con leche. The rest of my vacation was absolutely blissful. I went on a night walk through the rainforest and saw a sloth moving in slow motion through the canopy. I took a boat ride to see dolphins and whales. I learned to make traditional Costa Rican gallo pinto from the lodge's chef. I even met a really nice guy from Canada who was also traveling solo, and we had dinner together a couple of times. Every few days, I turned my phone on just to see the chaos unfolding back home, and honestly, it was better than any telenovela. The messages ranged from pleading to angry to resigned to desperate again. 3 days before the party, I got this message from Madison. The event planner we hired stole our deposit and disappeared. We're trying to plan everything ourselves, but we have no idea what we're doing. Please. 2 days before, we found a new caterer, but they're demanding payment upfront and want twice the original budget. The day before, Mom is in the bathroom crying. The flowers we ordered are apparently for a funeral, not an anniversary. Everything is black and white lilies. The day of the party, I got a series of increasingly frantic messages. 10 a.m., Mom, the tent rental company brought the wrong size tent. Half the guests won't fit. 12 p.m., Dad, the band we hired for tonight is apparently a death metal group, not classical musicians. 2 p.m., Paige, the caterer just called. Their kitchen failed inspection and they can't serve food tonight. 4 p.m., Madison, we're ordering pizza and praying people don't notice. 6 p.m., Mom, I can't do this. I'm canceling everything. And then, radio silence. I was sitting on my villa's private deck, watching the sunset over the rainforest canopy, when my phone buzzed with one final message. It was from Dad. Rebecca, you win. The party is cancelled. Your mother is devastated. I hope you're happy. I stared at that message for a long time. Was I happy? That was a complicated question. I wasn't happy that Mom was devastated. Despite everything, I didn't want her to be genuinely hurt. But was I satisfied that they'd finally experienced some consequences for their behavior? Was I pleased that their perfect party had imploded without me there to fix it? Was I gratified that they'd realized they actually needed the daughter they'd called an embarrassment? Yeah, I guess I was. The next morning, I decided to extend my stay by 2 more days. If I was going to be the villain in their story, I might as well enjoy it fully. I booked a sunset horseback ride along the beach and treated myself to a couple's massage with my new Canadian friend, David, who had become a lovely companion during my last few days. David was everything my family would approve of on paper. He was a pediatric surgeon from Toronto, spoke 3 languages, and came from what he jokingly called boring old money. But he was also spontaneous, funny, and completely non-judgmental about my family drama. So let me get this straight, he said as we rode horses along the Pacific coastline. Your parents told you to stay away from their party because you'd be embarrassing, and now they're mad that you actually stayed away? That's the gist of it, yes. And they only realized they needed you after everything went wrong? Exactly. David laughed, shaking his head. You know, my family can be pretentious too, but at least they've never told me to hide during important events. What would you do if they did? Probably exactly what you did. Sometimes people need to learn that actions have consequences. That evening, David and I had dinner at a beachfront restaurant, watching the waves crash while sharing stories about our respective family dysfunction. It was nice to talk to someone who understood the pressure of high expectations without judging me for my rebellion. You know what's funny? I said, sipping my piña colada. I spent so many years trying to prove to my family that I was successful on my own terms. I built a thriving business, I'm financially independent, I'm happy, but none of that mattered because I didn't fit their aesthetic. Their loss, David said simply. You're brilliant, funny, and clearly talented enough to build something from nothing. Plus, you're the only person I've met who can make family drama sound like a Netflix series. I laughed. Trust me, living it is less entertaining than hearing about it. I don't know. You seem to be handling it pretty well. You set a boundary, they crossed it, and you enforce consequences. That's actually pretty mature, even if your methods were a bit dramatic. Dramatic runs in the Anderson family, apparently. On my last morning in Costa Rica, I woke up early to watch the sunrise from my villa's deck. The howler monkeys were having their daily concert in the canopy above, and I could hear exotic birds calling to each other across the rainforest. It was peaceful in a way I'd never experienced before, no phone calls from demanding clients, no passive-aggressive family dinners, no pressure to be anyone other than exactly who I was. I thought about Jake, who was probably dealing with anxious calls from my family back home. I thought about my parents, who were likely nursing hangovers and wounded pride in equal measure. I thought about Madison and Paige, who had probably spent the weekend fielding calls from confused guests and trying to manage the fallout. Part of me felt guilty for putting them through all of this. But a bigger part of me felt free. For the first time in my adult life, I had prioritized my own well-being over my family's expectations. I had refused to be treated badly, and I had stuck to my guns even when it would have been easier to cave. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake, "Hope you're having an amazing last day in paradise. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. P.S. Your mom called me again. She's planning to meet you at the airport with a mariachi band to apologize. I told her that might be overkill." I laughed out loud, startling a toucan in the nearby tree. Even in crisis mode, my mother's instinct was to go bigger and more dramatic. A mariachi band apology was so perfectly Katherine Anderson that I almost wished I could see it. But I texted Jake back, "Please tell her no mariachi bands. I just want a normal homecoming." Too late. She already hired them. But don't worry, I convinced her to go with a string quartet instead. More appropriate for the circumstances, she said. Even her apologies had to meet her standards of propriety. Some things never changed. I spent my last afternoon in Costa Rica writing in the journal I'd been keeping throughout the trip. 2 weeks away from my normal life had given me perspective I didn't know I needed. I'd been so focused on trying to earn my family's approval that I'd forgotten I didn't actually need it. I had a successful business, a wonderful relationship, and friends who appreciated me exactly as I was. My family's love had always felt conditional, contingent on my success, my appearance, my choices. But Jake loved me unconditionally. Sarah had been my loyal friend through every bad decision and triumph. My clients trusted my creative vision and paid me well for it. I had built a life full of people who valued me, so why was I still desperately seeking validation from people who consistently made me feel inadequate? The realization was both liberating and heartbreaking. I loved my family, but I couldn't keep sacrificing my self-worth for their approval. That evening, I had one last dinner with David before our respective flights the next day. "So what's your plan when you get home?" he asked over ceviche and local beer. "Honestly? I'm not sure. I know I need to have a serious conversation with my family about boundaries and respect. But I also know that I can't keep expecting them to change if I'm not willing to change how I respond to them." "What do you mean?" "I mean I've been enabling their behavior by always coming back for more. Every time they hurt me, I'd get angry for a while, but then I'd show up to the next family dinner and pretend everything was fine. I never really held them accountable." David nodded thoughtfully. "So this vacation was your way of holding them accountable?" "I guess so. Though it was also just self-preservation. I needed to get away before I said something I couldn't take back." "And now?" "Now I go home and see if they've learned anything from this experience. And if they haven't..." I trailed off, not sure how to finish that sentence. "If they haven't, then you'll know where you stand," David said gently. "And you'll decide how much of yourself you're willing to sacrifice for people who don't appreciate what you bring to their lives." We exchanged contact information before parting ways, and David gave me a hug that felt like a blessing for whatever came next. "You're going to be fine," he said. "You're stronger than you think, and you deserve better than you've been accepting." I flew back to Connecticut 3 days later, well-rested and beautifully tan. Jake picked me up at the airport, and the first thing he said was, "Your family has been calling me nonstop trying to find you." "I figured they might," I said, kissing him hello. "How bad was it?" "Your mom called me crying on Tuesday. Your dad offered me $5,000 to tell him where you were on Wednesday. Your sister Madison threatened to have me arrested for kidnapping on Thursday." I laughed. "I'm sorry they dragged you into this." "Are you kidding? This was the best entertainment I've had all year. Though I do feel kind of bad for your mom. She seemed genuinely upset." That gave me a little pang of guilt, but I pushed it down. They'd made their bed with their cruel behavior, now they had to lie in it. I went to my apartment and unpacked, deliberately taking my time before dealing with my family. My phone was buzzing constantly with calls and texts, but I ignored them. I needed to process everything that had happened and decide how I wanted to handle the aftermath. Finally, around 7 p.m., I drove to my parents' house. I'd never seen the Anderson family home look anything less than immaculate, but when I pulled into the driveway, there was a huge wedding tent partially collapsed on the front lawn, still decorated with white tulle and a crooked "Just Married" banner. Dead funeral flowers were scattered around the entrance, and there was a banner hanging sideways over the door that read "Happy Anniversary Richard and Catherine" in what looked like hastily applied stick-on letters. I rang the doorbell, and Madison answered. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week. "Oh, thank God," she said, pulling me into a hug. "Where the hell have you been?" "Costa Rica. Like I said in my text. We thought you were lying to throw us off." "Why would I lie about going to Costa Rica?" "Because." She paused, looking confused. "I don't know. Because you were mad at us?" I walked into the house, and it was like entering a war zone. Mom was sitting on the couch in her bathrobe, surrounded by crumpled tissues. Dad was pacing back and forth, still in his tuxedo shirt but with his bow tie hanging loose around his neck. Paige was at the dining room table with her laptop, surrounded by papers and looking absolutely frazzled. "Rebecca." Mom jumped up when she saw me. "Oh, sweetheart, thank goodness you're home." She rushed over to hug me, and I could smell the wine on her breath. My composed, always perfect mother was a complete mess. "Are you okay, Mom?" "No, I'm not okay. The party was a disaster. Everything went wrong. The tent collapsed, the flowers were for a funeral, the caterer canceled, the band was inappropriate, and I had to call everyone and cancel the whole thing 3 hours before it was supposed to start." She was crying again, mascara running down her cheeks. "I'm sorry that happened," I said, and I genuinely meant it. "We needed you," Dad said, his voice strained. "We needed your help, and you were gone. I was out of sight, like you asked me to be." The room went quiet. Madison and Paige exchanged glances. "That's not what we meant, and you know it," Dad said. "Actually, that's exactly what you meant. You told me I would be a distraction at your important party. You said it would be better if I stayed out of sight. So I did." Mom wiped her eyes. "We were wrong, okay? We were wrong to say that." "Were you wrong to say it, or are you just sorry you needed me after all?" Another long silence. "Rebecca," Paige said carefully, "we know we hurt your feelings, but you have to understand how important this party was to Mom and Dad. They're friends, Dad's business contacts. More important than their daughter, apparently." "That's not fair," Madison snapped. "You could have helped us and still made your point." "Could I? Because it seems like the only time any of you realized you were wrong was when you needed something from me. Did anyone call to apologize for what Dad said before your party started falling apart?" No one answered. "Did anyone think maybe they should include Jake in the family celebration before you needed me to save the day?" Still nothing. "Did anyone consider that telling me to stay out of sight at my own parents' anniversary party might be incredibly hurtful and cruel?" Mom started crying again. "We just wanted everything to be perfect." "Perfect for who?" "Because it certainly wasn't perfect for me. You made it very clear that having me there would ruin your perfect party. So I gave you what you wanted, a party without me." Dad sat down heavily in his chair. "The party is ruined anyway. We had to cancel everything. 200 people were expecting to celebrate with us tonight, and instead we had to call them all and make excuses." "What did you tell them?" "That there was a family emergency," Mom said quietly. I almost laughed at the irony. "Well, I guess that was technically true. Your family emergency was that you alienated the one person who could have helped you." "So you knew this would happen?" Madison asked accusingly. "You knew our party would fall apart?" "Of course I didn't know your party would fall apart. I just knew that I wouldn't be there to fix it when it did. Which is what you told me you wanted." Jake had been right, this was better than any soap opera. "Rebecca," Mom said, "I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry for what we said. You're not an embarrassment, and you shouldn't have to stay out of sight. We were wrong. Are you apologizing because you realize you hurt me, or because you need me to forgive you so you'll feel better?" She looked taken aback. Both? At least she was honest. "And what about Jake?" I asked. "Is he still inappropriate for your family gatherings?" Mom and Dad exchanged glances. "We'd like to get to know him better," Dad said diplomatically. "That's not what I asked." Another pause. "Jake seems like a nice young man," Mom said carefully. "Perhaps we were too quick to judge. It was progress, I guess." "Here's what's going to happen," I said, sitting down across from them. "I'm willing to help you salvage something from this mess, but there are going to be some conditions." "Name them," Dad said immediately. First, Jake gets a real apology from all of you. Not a diplomatic non-apology, but an actual acknowledgement that you were wrong to treat him badly because of his appearance and profession. Done, Mom said. Second, you're going to have a small anniversary celebration next weekend, and Jake is invited. Not just invited, welcomed. And you're going to make an effort to actually get to know him instead of writing him off. Agreed, Dad said. Third, there are going to be some changes in how this family operates. No more casual cruelty disguised as honesty. No more treating me like I'm defective because I chose a different path than Madison and Paige. And definitely no more telling any family member to stay out of sight because they don't fit your image. Madison and Paige were nodding along, looking relieved that I was willing to help. And finally, I continued, you're going to call all those people you invited to tonight's party and invite them to the makeup celebration next weekend. And you're going to tell them that the original party was cancelled because you realized you'd excluded an important family member, and you wanted to make it right. Dad looked like he was going to object, but Mom put her hand on his arm. We'll do it, she said. All of it? And you're going to mean it. This isn't just about getting help with your party. This is about actually changing how you treat people. We understand, Dad said quietly. I looked around the room at my family, really looked at them. Mom with her mascara-streaked face and wine breath. Dad in his wrinkled tuxedo shirt, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Madison and Paige, exhausted from trying to solve problems they had no idea how to handle. They looked genuinely remorseful, but more than that, they looked broken. Their perfect image had cracked, and they'd realized they needed the daughter they'd taken for granted. Okay, I said. Let's fix this. What followed was the most intense week of event planning I'd ever experienced. I called in every favor I had, used every contact in my network, and worked 18-hour days to pull together a celebration worthy of my parents' 30th anniversary. The amazing thing was, once we started working together, my family actually listened to my suggestions. When I said we should have the party in the garden instead of inside, Mom agreed immediately. When I suggested a jazz trio instead of a string quartet, Dad nodded enthusiastically. When I recommended a local caterer who specialized in farm-to-table cuisine instead of the stuffy French restaurant they'd originally chosen, everyone was on board. Jake came over to help set up the day before the party, and I watched my family interact with him with fresh eyes. Dad actually asked him about his business and seemed genuinely interested in the answers. Mom complimented his tattoos and asked about the stories behind them. Madison and Paige treated him like a normal human being instead of an exotic specimen. It wasn't perfect, there was still some awkwardness, but it was progress. The celebration itself was absolutely beautiful. We set up long tables in the garden, strung fairy lights through the trees, and had the jazz trio play under the gazebo. The farm-to-table caterer created a menu that was both elegant and delicious, and the florist I found created arrangements that were sophisticated but not stuffy. 200 people came to celebrate my parents' anniversary, and everyone had a wonderful time. But more importantly, my whole family was there, including Jake, who charmed every person he met and proved definitively that judging people by their appearance is stupid and shallow. During the toasts, Dad stood up to speak, and I held my breath. 30 years ago, he said, I married the love of my life. Over those 30 years, Catherine and I have learned many things about marriage, about family, and about love. One of the most important things we've learned is that love means accepting people as they are, not trying to change them into who you think they should be. He looked directly at me. We've also learned that family means supporting each other, even when, especially when, we make mistakes. Our daughter Rebecca reminded us of that this week. She showed us that love isn't about appearances or meeting other people's expectations. It's about being there for each other, flaws and all. He raised his glass. So tonight, we're not just celebrating 30 years of marriage. We're celebrating the family we've built together, and the grace to forgive each other when we fall short of the love we owe one another. There wasn't a dry eye at my table. Later, as we were cleaning up, Mom pulled me aside. I owe you more than an apology, she said. I owe you gratitude. Not just for saving the party, but for having the courage to show us who we'd become. We lost sight of what was important, and you reminded us. I didn't handle it perfectly either, I admitted. I probably could have found a way to make my point without letting your party fall apart completely. No, Mom said firmly. You did exactly what you needed to do. Sometimes people need to experience consequences before they can change. 3 weeks later, Jake and I are still together, and my family is still treating him like an actual human being. Dad has even asked him to teach him some basic motorcycle maintenance, which is possibly the most surprising development in this entire story. Madison and Paige have both apologized individually for not standing up for me during that awful conversation, and we're slowly rebuilding our relationships. It's going to take time, but I think we're going to be okay. As for my parents, they seem genuinely committed to doing better. Mom has started asking about my design business and even referred a couple of clients to me. Dad invited Jake to play golf at the country club, which is basically his way of officially welcoming someone into the family. Is everything perfect now? Of course not. Families don't change overnight, and there are still moments of tension. But when Jake came to Sunday dinner last week wearing a button-down shirt that mostly covered his tattoos, Dad told him he didn't need to dress differently for our family. "We like you as you are," Dad said, and I could tell he meant it. Sometimes the best way to get your family to appreciate you is to give them exactly what they ask for, even when they don't realize how much they're going to regret it. They wanted me out of sight, so I disappeared completely. They wanted a perfect party without their embarrassing daughter, so I let them try to have one. And when it all fell apart, they finally understood what they'd lost. I'm not saying my method was mature or that I'd recommend it to everyone. But sometimes people need to learn the hard way that the family members they take for granted are the ones they can't live without. Plus, I got an amazing vacation in Costa Rica out of it, so really, everyone won in the end. Well, except for that first event planner who ran off with their deposit. But that's karma for you.